Consult an advisor or conduct your own due diligence when making financial decisions. General principles discussed during this program do not constitute personal advice. This program is furnished by Dentist Advisors, a registered investment advisor. This is Dentist Money. Now, here's your host, Reese Harper.
Welcome to the Dentist Money Show, where we help dentists make smart financial decisions. I'm your host, Reese Harper, here with my trusty old co-host, Sir Ryan Isaac.
Mm-hmm.
How you doing, sir?
Oh, fantastic.
I think I'd like to turn the time over to you to introduce Q.
I never get to do that, actually.
Yeah,
I never get to say, welcome to the show, here with Q in the studio.
Yes,
so
Q,
here we are.
Doing?
Q.
Yeah.
What's happening?
I like it when you do it.
Yeah, thank you. What's
Greetings,
happening?
Q.
Greetings
Thanks,
from
Reese.
the corner.
Q had a interesting question of the week.
Yep.
And he said, Ryan, what podcast do you think would be the most beneficial to our listeners?
Mm-hmm.
And you came up with this one.
Yeah.
So tell our listeners a little bit about what you spent
I did.
over 45 hours of preparation working on for this show.
So the opening line in the World Health Organization's Constitution of Health, which started in 1948, it says that health is the state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So the point of today is we want to explore this idea of health not being just the absence of a disease and relate it to a dentist's finances. So in different terms, what would the opening statement to the Constitution of Financial Health be? You know, financial health is a state of building wealth enough to make work optional at a reasonable age and not merely the absence of cash flow concerns.
Or emergencies or
some financial emergency.
Pain. Yeah, I think that's what we would say is a lot of people feel like they're healthy financially when they are not in pain, when there is not a problem.
I think that's the right word because, I think that there's a lot of people that feel financial comfort, but they're not in a good spot financially.
Yeah.
And the comfort could come from the fact that collections are high and growing, or there's just money in the bank.
There's money in the bank and they don't have like a cash flow problem.
Yeah.
Right? They don't lack for their meal or their roof over their head.
Or the third roof over their head.
Yep. Or the vacation.
Yeah.
The Cabo trip.
But that doesn't mean that everything's okay. So I think that's the context.
Exactly. And I think that it's important to think about financial planning in that context because we get phone calls from people when there is an emergency or a pain
usually
or a problem. And sometimes that is, I haven't thought about financial planning since I graduated from dental school, but the Social Security Administration is now telling me at what age I would like to take my check.
Yeah. 94
Am I
or
ready
97?
to retire? Am I ready to retire or not? I haven't looked at this in about near 35 years.
Yeah.
That has actually happened to me. That was an actual situation that actually happened to me.
Okay.
And I was like, interesting.
The prompt was the Social Security reach out.
That was the pain. It's like, I think I've saved enough money. I've never hired anyone to ask them that question up till now. But I don't know when I should take my Social Security
That's
check.
a good question.
And I also consequently am wondering if I have enough money to now retire.
Yeah.
But the fact that I have to make a choice about which age to take my Social Security is the first point in which I have some financial discomfort. And I'm going to address the problem now.
Yeah, because, there's a range and it changes quite a bit. If no one's looked at their Social Security, go do that. Go to your Social Security login online and check it. Yeah. You'll see it at like 62, 65, and 67, right?
Yeah, and so,
maybe in your 70s too.
And the pain, there was the first time, I guess, that this person had income their whole life and been stable and fine. And they weren't in financial poverty. They were in a fairly comfortable spot, but he was definitely didn't have adequate funds to stop working even with the Social Security. But it was kind of the first point where there was this choice to make. And I think it's pain that causes it, or it's discomfort maybe, or it's just some kind of big choice someone has to make, some kind of an emergency or some kind of a financial crossroads. And that's when they reach out. Well, last week we talked a lot about being consistent. And being consistent doesn't mean you're putting things on cruise control and just not thinking about it. Part of being consistent is looking for ways to improve on an ongoing basis and adapt even when cash flow is fine. Or there's no sign of disease, right? Or problem.
There's no emergency, no fire, no problem, no pain.
So let's frame this up with a conversation about your favorite subject. Once a year, I let this happen.
Q worked this in a little bit here.
Okay.
We related some things to. There's actually a really cool TED Talk out there. We related to building muscle. Okay, which is an important part of being healthy in this theme of being overall healthy, right? So what the point of like how this works, how muscles are built is actually when muscles are exposed to stress, they undergo little cellular changes and they experience little microscopic damages at the cellular level, right? And so that's actually good for your muscles. But we were kind of talking about the same thing happens in your finances as time passes, as things change. Little tears or little cracks occur in your financial plan. That's kind of a normal thing. In the context of your finances, then, it's not maybe as nice as hitting the gym and working your muscles out, but stress and damage still happens. And it's part of why good planning is constantly evolving, because these things, they break a little bit, they change a little bit, they break down. So, but back to muscles. So in response, the way muscles grow is when they break down and they're injured, there's an inflammatory response that happens, and it kind of activates the immune system and rebuilds the muscle. And when it rebuilds stronger and more resilient than it was before. So the point is that this cycle of like damage and repair, or as Justin calls it, tear and repair, #trademark. That's what makes muscles get bigger and stronger and adapt to greater future demands that you're going to put on it. And so, in context of finances, we're talking about these microscopic tears that are kind of like little gaps in the financial plan. They're hard to see, and especially if they're not an emergency, they're kind of hard to detect sometimes. But they definitely happen over time. These little stresses on your finances, these little changes, and so we're talking about repairing these little tears, these little damages that happen, these little gaps that get created, so that your wealth can be more resilient, can come back stronger, your wealth can grow faster and better as your plan and your situation changes.
So I think this is a really good analogy. It's actually a really beautiful comparison between the powerful, the change that goes through your muscles as you continue to exercise, and the change that happens with your finances as they continue to kind of break and readjust. Just don't get frustrated with the process. Just realize that process is actually making you stronger and making you more capable, and continuously seek after that improvement.
We'll talk a little bit about kind of this thought about financial atrophy. And there's a lot of little ways that someone can maybe ignore pieces of their financial plan that they need to address in order to make stronger in the future. Today we'll talk about 3 of them that are a little bit more specific. The first one would be a retirement plan. It's one of the first things that comes to mind. There's a lot of situations where retirement plans get maybe adopted or put in place and then left for an entire career. We've met a lot of people that have had the same retirement plan for decades that was stopped being like the appropriate plan like 10 years ago.
You don't want to think about your retirement plan as a single choice that you're going to make
once
throughout your career one time.
Yeah.
Just like an 18-year-old wouldn't exercise in the same way an 80-year-old would exercise. The 80-year-old might be focused on maintaining flexibility, and an 18-year-old might be focused on building mass.
Mm-hmm.
And those two exercise goals are going to be very different. And in the same way, a retirement planning goal for someone really early in their career might be taking advantage of getting their debt to income ratio in check, and getting after-tax savings built up because they don't have a super high tax rate, because all of their business depreciation is bringing their tax rate down really low. Where someone in their mid-40s might have so much discretionary cash flow now and so much after-tax savings built up that it's time for them to make a big adjustment to the type of plan that they've put in place. There's different retirement plans that you should be implementing along the way, and they get more and more complex as time passes. And I guess we've had podcasts on this subject.
Yeah, how to set them up, how to choose the right ones.
But I think I would like to just say that, you can save anywhere from $5,500 a year right now up to almost $300,000 a year, depending on your income level and age.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to just be aware that at every phase of your life and every phase of cash flow, there's going to be a retirement plan design that a dentist is best suited for. And if you are not allowing yourself to take advantage of the largest tax deduction possible, as you have that excess cash flow, you're basically just minimizing the amount of net worth growth, or we'll call it, your muscle growth. You're just not going to have as much growth over your career. Yesterday, I had a conversation with someone that we were able to put in place a plan in their early 40s that was allowing them to defer, almost $150,000 away towards retirement because of the cash flow that they had, the debt to income ratio that he had, and the staff composition of the practice. And this person, has been very proactive, reaching out and trying to get involved and being involved in our ongoing planning process. And it's amazing to me, like, how much different someone's net worth is at age 55 when they're constantly making adjustments to that retirement plan, as opposed to just setting it up and keeping the same plan in place throughout their entire career. And if no one else is coming to you, telling you what adjustments you can make to that plan, you probably don't have someone who's being very proactive in that area, because you shouldn't just set up a plan and assume that it's the same plan's going to work for the next 10 years. Because it's every year you need to be looking at this.
Well, and in the crucial years, probably starting in somewhere in your 40s, those are probably the crucial years. And a lot of it, like you said, is dependent on how many staff you have, the demographic of ages and disparity of age between the owner and all the other employees. But somewhere in your 40s, it starts to become really crucial, where the type of plan and how much money can go away pre-tax fluctuates a lot.
Yeah.
And you fire one person and hire someone of a different age, it changes the plan completely. What might have made sense last year could be really inefficient the next year based on a couple hiring decisions.
Yeah.
And so we see that. I think I just kind of wanted to hit some of the more common times that happens. One of them would be something gets set up early in career and it's kind of left that way for a long time. Another situation that I see when people call in are when they purchase a practice from a retiring doc, where a certain retirement plan made a lot of sense for him because of his age and income level, but doesn't for the person who's 25 years younger and has a different income level and different age disparity. So those are probably the two situations where I've seen them be the least efficient.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a good area and something to continue to think about. If you're not looking at this plan, your plan design every year, you may actually be missing out on an opportunity to grow your net worth at tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars faster per year. And that really adds up over time. And it's interesting to me, looking at two people who just make different choices in how often how engaged they are at actually caring about their retirement plan design. Someone who's a client of ours might be in a different situation because we're proactively doing that every year.
Part of something we do.
But when I just observe like the market generally, man, there's just there's a really common tendency to sort of set up whatever you set up in the first time is the thing you kind of stick with.
Yeah.
Hey, you mentioned that we did an entire episode on this. I was just going to mention that's episode 53. And for anybody that's interested in listening to that, called Everything You Need to Know About Retirement Plans.
Yeah. Let's go into the second item where dentists get complacent. This one is one where we think it's a related issue to this muscle.
This one's a sleeper
development, but it's a sleeping giant.
It is. This one's a sleeper.
And this is the issue of PPO negotiations or insurance contracts. It's the idea of having to deal with this is kind of overwhelming, and it's not that easy to put your finger on.
No.
And it involves someone else helping, and sometimes it doesn't seem like...
It's kind of an art, and it's kind of a science, and it also means raising prices, or it could mean letting patients go, and that just seems like such a pain to deal with.
These insurance plans have a lot to do with the health of your practice, especially depending on the market you live. Some markets and some practices, some people listening to this are like, that's why I'm fee for service, bud. And I don't deal with all this. It's like, that's awesome if you've been able to pull that off.
Yeah.
And if you haven't been able to pull that off, you're probably just going, yeah, I wish that was my life, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And in the market that you live in, you'll know like if it's viable for you or not to have that as an option. But for most people listening, they're dealing with insurance.
Yeah.
And this involve, and depending on the state you live in, you could be dealing with a lot of insurances
or just a few.
Just a few.
Yeah.
And this may or may not have as much impact depending on how simple this is for you. But
Yeah.
for those of you who it's complicated for, that's who we're talking to. And I think that it's just interesting to see how practices income can vary based on how well they manage this.
Well, and efficiency, and we'll talk about this in a second, but I just wanted to reiterate the reason why we say this is a sleeper, is a sleeping giant, is because this is one of the areas in a dentist's financial life that isn't going to, I don't know, it doesn't really rear its ugly problematic emergency fire head, does it?
No.
I mean, it's not, this is one of those things where
That sounds like a really dangerous monster that you
It's
just
You just said like a really dangerous monster.
He's on Game of Thrones. This monster is, I don't know. But no, this isn't one of those things where you go into the office, you're like, that's clearly a problem today. You know, it's kind of just like, you might notice that you're working the same amount of hours and you're not quite making as much, or collections are growing, but your income's not growing. That's a slow, steady bleed. It's not like, you know, there's no money in the bank or something flooded in the office, or it's not like an emergency problem. So it tends to be not super painful at any one time and then just kind of go on for a long time.
Yep. Kind of like paying too much taxes and not touching your retirement
At least
plan
that's once
from
a year.
option
At least
one.
that bugs someone once a year.
Yeah. But from option A in our retirement plan example, I think they're related in that there's most of these things that are the sleeping giants. They're just things that just kind of bleed slowly and that are unnoticeable.
Okay.
They just last forever.
If you just make a little bit more money, the problem feels less painful.
So we want to play an interview segment from Chris Taylor, who actually works in this industry. We did an interview with him, episode 44 of the show, where he gave some tips in this area that we thought would be kind of helpful to instead of having me and Ryan jump into it, since it's really not our area of expertise. But I wanted to just go ahead and play that for you.
Roll tape.
It's interesting, Chris, and in our experience, we don't see incomes, like dental incomes don't always correlate with the lowest, or highest reimbursement rate areas.
We have been able to find that the variance in profitability is up around 50%. That is, one dentist is literally losing 10% on insurance X. Another dentist is making 40% on the same insurance and the same fee schedule. So that shows you that it is so different per actual office that each dentist has to have this information. It doesn't matter whether I do it or somebody else, but somebody has to find out, here's the profitability of each of your potential payers, especially the ones you're actually on.
Yeah.
And hey, by the way, here's the net profit, the profitability of 7 insurances that you don't carry right now that maybe are great to add in there, not because you want to add an insurance, but because you want to play the game and find the best mix of insurances. I think that's the key. The best mix of insurances for your practice. And I guarantee you, I've never seen it the same as far as which insurances are the most profitable for each office. Never.
So let's say we do this analysis then, and that's true, where these insurances, they're not consistent. How do I go back to my care? Like, what do I do? Do you guys provide my office with like scripts? Do you give us emails? Like, does my front desk call every year? Do they call every 6 months? I mean, what's the process generally to making sure that I'm being reimbursed effectively and that I can prove my case essentially for why an adjustment might need to be made?
Well, you can certainly negotiate with the insurances, and it's kind of like a credit card. That you might be able to get a higher or a lower interest rate on a credit card, but they're not necessarily going to contact you and say, "Hey, give us a call. We're going to lower your rate."
Yeah,
I think it's very similar, and I don't know what process they go through, but I'm guessing that they run some sort of algorithm of their own. In fact, I'm pretty sure MetLife's a multi-billion-dollar company. They've got a lot of information, and I think they may simply say this dentist is making this much for me, for us, So we're willing to give a little more. But for whatever reason, if they can be contacted and they may raise the fees. I mean, it's, again, to them, it may be an advantage. You don't have to go to war with them. To me, it's let's find out which insurances are the most profitable. And if they have profitable patients, and I'm profitable with that insurance, rather than look at the write-off percentage, let's look at what we're making with each insurance and with each procedure within each insurance, which we also figure out, and that's important to do. As a general dentist, you may want to refer out, root canals or whatever, with Insurance X. At least you have that information because you're not making much.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you can certainly contact the insurances and see what they'll do for you. Again, it can be a win-win. I mean, if you're getting more patients that are profitable, that's the key. And I talk to a lot of dentists that are totally, again, understandably saying, I just need more patients. I need more patients. And one of the things that we're saying, and I'm working with a really bright guy named Chris Kofroth, and he kind of stresses this, but you don't just want to get in new patients. You want to get in patients that are still profitable.
Yeah.
If you're bringing in patients with Insurance X and you're at negative 20%, you are literally pulling money out of your bank account.
That's a great interview. And
Shout out to Chris. Thanks, buddy.
But if one of the things that he mentioned there is variance or standard deviation in profitability and how it can swing. In his experience, that standard deviation of profitability swings like 50%. One dentist could be like losing 10% on one schedule, and another could be making 40% on the same schedule.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And for some of you, that applies perfectly, and for some, you might be looking at your situation going, "There's not that much flexibility." But you've got to be able to assess this in your own practice to determine if that's really happening.
Yeah, and one of the other points he made, I think that is really important. You hear this a lot, is sometimes the answer to financial pain in a practice is to just get more patients. Like, I just need more patients. I just got to grow, got to get more patients. But he makes the point that if you're bringing on more patients in a way that's not profitable, it doesn't matter how many you bring on, you're still losing money or, not making any money on all these new patients. It could be that if you made an adjustment here to some of your fee schedules, the insurances that you accept or the way you accept and the procedures that you do on certain plans, could mean that you don't even need that many new patients to actually grow. You could need fewer new patients than you think to grow if they were just done in a more profitable way.
Yeah. I like how he mentioned looking at the write-off percentage. Don't look at the write-off percentage, but look at the profit you're actually making.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that can be deceiving.
Like, I charge this, but I have to write off this much. That's terrible. But it actually could be really profitable for you if you're doing it in the right way, the right procedures and everything.
Yeah, well, it just depends on each practice how much money you're going to make from one additional procedure. And you just need to look at the dollar amount that you're actually collecting and determine if that's worth the time that you're allocating to that sometimes, rather than just eliminating things based on the percentage. Also, I think it's no two practices are the same in any given area. I mean, sometimes there's a best mix of insurance for you and your area, and no two perfect mixes are the same either. It just depends on
the perfect mix of insurance plans for one person could be totally different for the person that's down the road that has a different patient demographic or doing different procedures.
I think those are, listen to the entire episode if you want on that one. We won't dive into it a lot more, but episode 44, if you go to dentistadvisors.com/listen, or you can just find episode 44 on iTunes with whatever podcast app you're using. It's called Improving Profit Margins with Better Fee Schedules. Okay, the third item that we're going to talk about, which is one of your favorites, which is sitting on a large pile of dollar bills.
Yep. Just like my childhood hero, Scrooge McDuck.
You swim around in your money.
Basically.
And it's a giant pile of it.
Yes. That's how I spend
love
my
the
free
opening
time.
of that show. Did he swim in money or gold coins?
It's gold coins.
I think it was Bitcoin.
Yeah.
He was swimming in Bitcoin.
He was swimming in Bitcoin.
It's the new, when they reboot the DuckTales cartoon series, it'll be totally animated and like really action packed, and he swims in Bitcoin.
He's like swimming through ones and zeros.
He just goes into the Matrix and swims around in Bitcoin.
Oh man, that was a good show.
Anyway,
DuckTales.
I showed my kids the DuckTales movie.
You did?
And they were like, what is this?
It's so just weird.
It's so weird.
But it was cool.
Anyway. But just like Scrooge.
Sitting on too much cash in your business checking account is like it's okay. I'm not going to say it's a bad thing. It's a dang good thing. If I see it, I applaud you. What does this tell me? It tells me that you didn't spend it.
You could have done something.
And you had the discipline to just hold on to your money and let it sit there. Thank you for being so disciplined.
Totally agree.
That is not the worst problem in the world. But if you hold too much cash in your business checking account, it gets harder and harder to invest it. The same thing happens inside of your investment portfolio. A lot of times we'll see people have a very conservative investment portfolio and then a very aggressive investment portfolio, but they'll switch it, right? They won't be able to sort of stick with something. And we recommend not going through these periods of time where you let too much cash pile up. You have to think of your investments as what we call an expected return or an opportunity cost. Let's talk about what this means. If there's an expected return, what we're saying is we don't know if we're at what point in time we're actually going to get that return. No one does. We just know that a particular investment has an expected return, meaning if we've got an investment that's going to get 3%, we know that by putting it in there, our expectation is we're going to get 3. We won't actually get 3. We might get +5 or -1, but a 3% average return type of investment will have some variability that'll move up and down. And if you can just expect that you're going to get 3, you can treat your money that way.
Yeah.
Then you don't have to be in the game of comparing whether what you're about to put it in is better than the bank or a mortgage. If you wouldn't want to take money out of a bank account that's perfectly fine sitting there not losing money and then put it in an investment that's expected return is 2, if it could lose you 5 and maybe gain you 7. You'd want to put your money in something that actually gave you a higher unexpected return that was a meaningful difference from where it was at. Or instead of paying down a mortgage, you wouldn't want to say, I'm not going to pay off a mortgage. I'm going to invest money in something that's getting me 3.5%. Yeah. Well, that's not enough of a difference to be worth making that trade-off.
Yeah, isn't worth the trade-off.
But I think too many people think about their investments in terms of actual moment-to-moment returns rather than thinking about their investments in terms of expected returns, because we have no idea what the moment-to-moment return of an investment is going to be. If your 401k plan is in a portfolio that is going to average 10%, we don't know exactly how that's going to show up.
The next couple. Yeah.
But the fact that the market is quote unquote expensive is not a reason to avoid investing in that. You can't say, well, it's safer in the bank right now because if I put it in my 401k, the market's high and I might lose money. Well, the expected return of your 401k is 10% a year.
Not 12 months from now.
We just know that is the average return we're going to expect. So why would you allow money to pile up in an account where the expected return of the bank account is 0 to 0.1
or negative from inflation,
and the expected return of the investment you could put it in is much higher? I mean, at least pay off a piece of debt, right? Sure. At least pay down a mortgage. Like, utilize your cash in an effective way.
So why does this happen? Why does cash sit around? I think there's a few reasons. What are some that you would think? Like, why do people leave it there?
Well, number one, I don't think that people have 100% closure on what their options are.
Okay,
I don't think they know what their options are.
Totally, yes.
Second, I don't think they really know which option is best. So number one, they don't know what options they have. Number two, they don't know which one to pick. And it's hard picking, like, pay down debt, invest money, let it sit here.
I might buy a building.
I might kind of
want to move.
I might remodel my house. Yeah. We might need a down payment. Yeah. There's all of this uncertainty that makes you hold on to cash.
Yep.
And I'm not saying you shouldn't have any. I'm just saying the work of financial planning is wading through those choices until you actually earmark specific dollar amounts of money for specific goals. So let's just talk about the option of I might buy a building. Okay, you might buy a building. You have $400,000 in your checking account and you might buy a building. What does that mean? Well, the building is going to cost what? Well, I don't know. Well, why do you not know what the building is going to cost? I haven't thought about it yet. Well, okay, so are you going to have a multi-tenant building, or is it just a condo for yourself? Or are you going to buy a condo in an existing building? I don't know. Well, what do you think the maximum cost would be that you'd want to spend on
Talk to
something
someone
like
who
that?
knows. Yeah.
Okay, so you get to a number, get to a dollar amount of like an actual number. Like the market that I live in, it costs $300 a foot, and I'm gonna need 3,000 square feet. I need 900,000. Okay, you need $900,000. How much money do you need for that building?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. Well, how are we gonna finance it? Well, are you gonna put 40% down? Are you gonna put 50? No, I'm not. Okay, you're gonna put 10%
You're
down.
gonna put the minimum down, right?
Well, let's decide what our down payment's gonna be.
I don't know what I can afford. Well, why don't you know what you can afford?
We haven't talked to a lender. I haven't understood. I don't know.
Yeah.
So we get through these questions and we find out at the end of this conversation that you might buy a building,
But out of the 400 that's sitting there,
you need 180,000.
yeah,
And out of the 180,000, when's the likely point in time that you'll need it?
3 years from now. Yeah.
18 months, 2 years. Okay, well, let's earmark 180,000. Let's invest it in something that's growing at 2.5% a year.
Yeah.
Because-
that we can grab at the moment's notice.
Because we don't know
Yeah.
exactly when or exactly the month we'll need it. We don't want to take risk. But this other amount of money, what is it for? Is there anything it's for? I don't know. Maybe I might want to remodel my house. Well, what are you thinking about to do with the remodel?
Yeah.
Or
Same exercise.
yeah, and if you can earmark the amounts of money that you have in your checking account for specific goals and then deploy those, it really will change the entire. Because you could spend 10 or 15 years of your life sitting on millions of dollars of cash in your investment portfolio that you don't want to invest, or in your bank accounts, just because you haven't really precisely identified the point in time that you need the money.
And what the options
amount,
even are.
What the amount is, what the options are. Let's say you're investing for retirement, but you're worried that the market might crash, and so you've got it in cash. I see this all the time. Do you see this?
Yes.
I'm investing for retirement, but I'm worried the market might crash. So
I'm waiting.
I'm conservative.
Yeah.
I'm going to wait and see.
Yeah.
Well, this amount of money that you're waiting, when are you going to touch it? At what point in time are you going to withdraw the money? Okay, well, you're 55 and you're worried about it. Are you going to withdraw it at 62? Are you going to withdraw it at 65, 67, 70, 72? There's going to be a specific period of time that a tranche of money is going to be withdrawn.
Mm-hmm.
And not all of your money has the same time frame.
Yeah.
Some of your money you're not going to touch till you're 70.
Which is intuitive, but a lot of people don't think about that in retirement. Retirement, the day you stop working, always kind of seems like this period where all of my money is now accessible. I just go grab all of it somehow.
Yeah.
And that's just not the case at all.
No, you're going to withdraw certain amounts from certain accounts at certain times. And so each tranche of money needs to have a specific time frame it's tied to and a specific amount that you know you're going to be withdrawing. This kind of financial planning precision makes the difference between someone who's financially independent and someone who's kind of almost there but a little uncomfortable, because most dentists have the ability to save 20 to 25% of their income, and as long as it doesn't get stolen from you, you're going to be able to make work optional at an early age.
Yeah.
But if you don't implement basic financial planning consistency and really execute it well, like labeling dollars for specific goals, like executing the right retirement plan changes every year, all of these things that we're talking about today are just they're just the work of financial planning that has to happen, and a good advisor should be doing that for you. You shouldn't be carrying the weight of this all on your own.
Yeah.
And if you don't, unless you have the competency, interest, and ability to do so, which a lot of our listeners do. I mean, there's some people that listen to the show that just, they love doing all this stuff on their own, and we get emails all the time of like, how would you calculate this? How would I do this?
Yeah.
But for the majority of people that are dentists and entreprofessionals, they're going to be going, I need someone to calculate a lot of the stuff for me, and I need someone to do the heavy lifting.
Well, and the reason why I know that what you said is true, the first thing you said is people just don't know what their options are. And when there's no clarity, you just kind of get stuck. You kind of get, you get frozen, right? And the reason I know that's true is because we'll meet people that have hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in their bank account, and it's been there for years.
Yeah.
And they'll make decisions on all that money within 30 days of working with us.
Yeah.
And it's not because we have some magic thing they've never heard of before, or like we're convincing them to do something they've never considered. It's just we're presenting options that are really clear.
Yeah.
We're showing people how to quantify how much needs to be sitting around still for the building, how to quantify how much to keep liquid in your practice just for running the practice, how much to keep in an emergency fund, how much to earmark for 40 years from now. And just with those little bits of clarity and quantifying some of those numbers, then it's so easy to make decisions.
Like, I'm not stressed out anymore.
No, someone who sat on $500,000 for 5 or 6 years all of a sudden puts it in places in 30 days.
I've got a story I want to tell real quick that was really interesting to me this week. There's a client of mine's going through an eye surgery right now. She's older, in her mid 70s, and her husband's also in his mid 70s. Really successful practice throughout his life, and it's in a great financial position. Multi-million-dollar net worth, and I'm not worried about them at all financially. But they called me when she was going through surgery, and actually it was an email. The first thing I got was an email. The email said, we really need to meet. We really got to talk about some things. And I just met with them 6 months earlier, and I was in my head, I was like, we're totally fine. Everything's awesome.
Yeah.
But we got to meet. We're kind of worried about our finances and need some kind of information about whether we're going to be okay. And we just want to know that we're going to be okay. And it was this moment where, this client spouse was going through this eye surgery, and, they're both just kind of feeling like they had some needs, new cars. They wanted to buy a couple new cars. And they wanted to potentially relocate and move into a different condo that was closer to the city instead of being out where they were at. And that was kind of I get their house and we start talking, and it was interesting because they were really anxious about like running out of money and not having enough, because they felt like this pension plan, one of their accounts, they had finally spent down the money in one of their accounts, and they were worried that now that account was empty, that they weren't going to have enough, right, to buy the new cars and relocate and remodel the house. And within about 10 minutes, of just saying, well, you have this account and it's invested this way, and it can, you could use that to remodel the house, and then this account is for your living expenses, and then Social Security is paying this much, coming in at this level, and you're withdrawing this much from this account, and see of all of your accounts combined, you're still only withdrawing like 2.5% of your money. There is no stress that you should have. You should not be worried, and everything's okay. They just were like, oh man, thank you.
But the one account like ending was the
account
trigger.
Ending was the trigger
for like, oh, maybe it's not okay.
Maybe life's not okay. And it was just the finance. It's kind of sad at some level, and this is just accentuates the point. Someone in their mid 70s who's worked really hard their whole life to accumulate plenty of resources, but they're still at a point where they're worried and anxious about what they were talking to me about. Like, we're going to cut our budget. We're not going to travel anymore. Like, we're not going to keep doing like all the things we were. Last year was a little crazy. Like, we got to go on some really nice vacations to Europe, and
now we're totally not going to do anything.
We're not going to do anything because we know that we've overspent and we've been living, so we're going to cut back. And I was like, kind of like just taking all this in for the first 20 minutes, and I'm worried myself a little bit, because I'm going, man, if they're so worried, like maybe something's wrong with the numbers.
Yeah, right.
So, I go through the numbers again in my head, and I'm looking at all their reporting, and I'm going, no, this is going to be fine. And my perspective on it, was so different than their perspective. It just let them sit back and just kind of go, oh, thank you. So can we go on this vacation we were planning on doing this year?
Yeah, go.
Yeah. Like, there's no reason. Like, do you want to pass on like all of this money to your posterity?
Yeah.
Or do you guys want to like have some of it for yourselves and keep doing these vacations? Yeah. Like, I know your kids want you to enjoy this.
Yeah.
And you have plenty.
Yeah.
And I don't know that, like, that's one side of the extreme. I know that there's two sides to this. Some people have way too little and some people have enough. Mm-hmm. But there's still the lack of clarity around how much things cost and what exact amounts of money do you need for specific things. And it makes people emotionally carry a burden and a weight that they don't need to carry.
Yeah, it's unnecessary. Yeah. And then having those answers, a little bits of clarity, I mean, it goes such a long way too. It changes everything.
Anyway, I think in conclusion here, we've hit three things that are really crucial. One, make sure and revisit your retirement plan on a regular basis.
Second would be periodically analyze your insurance contracts in relation to your practice profitability.
And third, don't let all your cash pile up and miss out on growth.
So what we're saying here is, although there might not be any emergencies in your finance today, it doesn't mean that you're totally healthy, right? That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Just because there's no fires doesn't mean everything is okay. And don't put these things off, because they do have a really big impact on your ability to make work optional at an earlier age. So thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We would love if you would follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Just look for the Dentist Money Show. You can book a free call with us. Go to dentistadvisors.com. At the top of the webpage, there's a link to schedule on our calendar. Or you can call us on our illustrious new phone number, which is 833-DDS-PLAN. If you book a call on our calendar, or if you call 833-DDS-PLAN, we will talk about your situation. We will answer your questions about your net worth and how it's growing and how you can make different decisions to make work optional at an earlier age. Operators are standing by.
Carry on.